the Allplan IFC file. Once we create a project inside DDS, we can open up the first floor in which we would like to use the first story from the IFC file. The IFC file is copied into the project directory by clicking on the file. In the import dialog we can choose the different representations or converting options to DDS objects, and in this case we choose to have an import and convert for all of the stories and availables available in the project. First thing what we can do is use the option of zoom extend on every story, so we will have an overview of the available stories and whether to see the project is completely imported. If I now open up from the project menu all floors and using the function of ghost models to implement or to activate the 3 different stories which are now available in my zoom extend front view, we can already see that this building is like added up from the different stories on top of each other. There is a difference in the representation for the 2D and 3D information. What we can see, from example, a 2D door is the drawing or the opening direction of the door. In 3D it will be represented as a complete full object. So this is the building model in front view. If I now switch back to my 2D on the ground floor and choose for the option in DDS under Tools, Options, IFC Options, I can see that DDS will now draw the known geometry like doors, windows, etc. and all the other objects which are not converted are placed or visible as an IFC geometry. I can also change this view in 2D to only the IFC geometry. We can now see that, for example, the detail of the doors is slightly different. So this is the representation from the IFC file of the 3D door. The option of Tools, Options, IFC Options, I now turn on Open Cascade for rather advanced handling of the graphics in this file. If I turn this one off, and I will have my 2D display available for the DDS geometry. My default setting for the 3D display is always for IFC geometry because of the fact that the detail level of the 3D model in IFC view is more advanced than within DDS. Well, in this file we are facing the fact that the opening elements inside a wall are not represented in the normal view, but if I now turn on by options, IFC options, the open cascade view, the rendering will take a little bit more of time, but then the wall openings will be represented correctly, as we can now see. Switching back to the 2D information, normal when we open up and draw a model inside DDS, for our area we have a red boundary out for the outer space of the building. The rooms which are defined are visible in green. In this model we can see that all walls are visible as orange walls. When I double click on number 14 in this case, we can see that from the IFC file we have an auto-generated wall. Because of the fact that we don't have any information inside the IFC whether it's an exterior or external wall or it's an interior or internal wall, DDS will put the object for the conversion to an auto-generated wall. This means that we don't have any information, for example, for U values, etc. And if we now click on the tab of our building dialog to see the U values, we can also see that the U value for this type of object is set to 0, which means we have to determine the correct U values. The information from the IFC file is converted to DDS objects. The possibility exists that we can have mapping for IFC objects. Within the same option dialog on IFC option, when we choose to have a mapping of IFC layers, we can see the available components which are available for mapping to DDS objects. When we open up the checkbox of doors, we can see 3 different door types used in this model. And if we now select, for example, this 1 meter and 1 centimeter door, we can also zoom in the model already to see where is this door used. So I can see this is an interior door, and in the option of the mapping I can choose to have a mapping to a DDS object, and also I can choose from my navigator, I can choose an interior door with, for example, a wood function or glass material. What is more important is of course the U value in this case. So if we can determine the U value of the door, we can make a copy of such a door, and we can change, for example, also the naming, and we can also change on the right side the proper U value for this door. If we now press OK, we can see in bold that already mapped components are visible in the tree structure. I will now also map to a lavabo. This means when the object of a space with a function, in this case the name of lavabo, is used, we can map it also to a DDS object, and from my thinking, like lavabo could be a toilet. Whether it's in a residential building or we have a non-residential building like an office, we can map it to a function of toilet or bathroom. Let's see if we can find one. In this case I will map it to a toilet. If I would like to have a different function or a room, of course I can make a copy and change to a general name toilet, and apply the settings for the temperature as a minimum and maximum, etc. So in this case also lavabo is now mapped to toilet, and on the right side of this dialog we can apply these changes or these mapping to all stories or different stories in this model. In this case I will choose for all stories, and what will happen is that we will convert or map the IFC door to an internal door. We will map the function of lavabo, or this is washing room and this could be toilet. Bagno means officina. I will also map in my non-residential building office to a function called office. And when I apply these mapped options, then we can see in DDS that first of all the door which was internal was green, which means there was no defined U value. And if we now double click on this door, we can see from the door type it is mapped to the object we called naming. The same will happen for the function of the space we mapped. So lavabo is now mapped and also office is mapped. That means if we switch to render mode and we will use the function of the coloring like this, because of the fact we have the open cascade turned on, the rendering will be a slightly increase in delay of this. If I now turn on the rendering, I cannot see any difference on this floor, but maybe on the second floor there is a difference in mapping. Let's see what we can get visible on the rendering. To open up the elements for the windows, the open cascade needs to be turned on to have a good representation. Of course, for our calculation it's not necessary that there is no door opening or no wall opening. So we now can also see, if I click inside a space for example, that this space is not only called by name officina, but also the function is now mapped to office. This means that we have the proper information from the model. Okay, to speed up I will turn off the open cascade function. First I'm switching back to 2D. The representation of the one specific space can also be set with room number, description and height inside the room. And if we now choose the room information to be visible, we can see that we have a wall number 1, and in wall number 1 we also have a link to wall number 2, and inside wall number 3 the direct relation to the door in this case is available. That means that from the information point of view, the relations are visible, which means that this door is like a relation to wall number 2. And if we now click on the information in this room on the other side, we can see that the same wall number 2 relation to the door is on wall number 13 with the same name of this door in wall number 13 from the other space. So this is the most important thing, that the information setup for the building model is available in order to have proper heat load depending on the U values of the information. So for example, we can see that the door is now generated with a U value, so every component which is mapped will also be visible when it has a different U value inside here. And once again, the dialog for mapping the components within options, IFC options, we can have a view of which objects are already mapped and which other objects need to be mapped also. The mapping of those components will be remembered, which means if we import another IFC file from the same architect who is using the same naming for his doors, walls, spaces, etc., the mapping will automatically be recognized, and we can see the availability of the bold mapped options, and then we can directly apply the changes to the DDS CAD model in order to do direct calculations and direct representation of the proper components. So that will speed up our process.